So hello everyone, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good night for some of you. For the sake of the people that they joined us today on time, let's start the session because we prefer to respect the ones that they are already with us together. So it's a great honor and pleasure for all of us from the Global Young Academy to present here the challenges and activities of the early career researchers, and I hope that you are going to have a fruitful discussion and great introduction regarding the activities that we have during the decade of the establishment of the Global Young Academy. I'm really glad to see all of my fellows here, really great to have all of you here after a long time, after our AGM in our Annual General Assembly in June. It's really great to have you here, and it's a great pleasure for all of us to be for the first time to be represented in this prestigious event of the UN Science Summit, and we hope that we can continue this road in future too. So let me just share my slides with you, just have an opening, and after that we will continue with the schedule that I'm going to explain you how it's going to be. So I hope you have my screen. Wonderful. So the session is named Young and Global, a perspective on today's challenges in science. And I'm Encieh Erfani. I got the GYA member in 2021, and I'm originally from Iran. And I'm the executive committee member of the Global Young Academy since 2021. And as a main job, I am the assistant professor of physics in the Institute for Advanced Study of Basic Sciences in Iran. So the outline of our session is going to be a short introduction to the GYA by our co-chair, Priscilla Monte. And after that, we will continue with the activities of our Scientific Excellence Group with our 3 fellows. They will let you know that what we mean by excellent scientists, because it's one of the criteria that we choose our members by the selection process. After that, we will go to the science diplomacy, which is one of the main topics of this science summit that makes a bridge between the scientists and policymakers. And you will hear about the activities of the early career researchers in this case. After that, we will go to the National Young Academies, because we are also one of them. Of course, we are one of the global ones. And they are from all the countries all around the world, but some countries have also their own young academies. So we are going to talk about them, which countries they already have it, and how they established, and how the activities are running, and what challenges they have. After that, we will go to the inclusion and diversity and equity at GYA, which is one of the main issues in our academy, and we will let you know that how we achieve them and what are our future plans to do that. So since the session is going to be too long for you and probably boring, we are going to have a short break of 10 minutes. And there you will get informed by the important project of the Global Young Academy regarding the science communications called SciSco. So you will get informed how outreach activities also we have at GYA. After the break, we will recombine to go to the collaboration of the North-South and South-South, because in GYA we have a scholarship and grant that helps to the members from North and South or South and South to collaborate together in the sake of science and foster the collaboration. So and after that, we will go to the at-risk scholars topic. If you are not familiar with that, you will hear about it more. And we will let you know that what we mean by the at-risk scholars. At the end, we are going to have the open science session with our open science group. And we will let you know that why open science in this century is really important for science communication. And at the end, of course, you are going to have chance to ask your questions. So please put them in a chat box if you have any, and we will be really happy to have a fruitful discussion with all of you. So our speakers, you already have seen them in our agenda. So you see that one of the main things is that you see that in the case of the speakers, we have a gender balance. And of course, we have the members that they are all around the world. So we have also inclusion and diversity in our members in general. So I'm gonna introduce all of the speakers when their turn will be. So just let me hear. And I'm really glad to have all my friends and fellows here with you, and I'm sure that you will also enjoy their presentations. And I should also emphasize that none of these activities in GYA could be happen without the help of our great office members that you can see all of them here, and some of them also are represented here, although the office time is almost over in Halle, Germany. So we are really happy to have them with us, and then without them, of course, the GYA cannot run as good as you will hear about that. So thank you so much for your attention. And we will start with the introduction to the GYA by our co-chair, Priscilla Montem. Just a short introduction regarding the Priscilla. Priscilla is originally from Ghana, and she became the GYA member in 2021, and she been selected as the co-chair in 2022, and she will run till 2023. As her background, she has a PhD in pharmacology, and also she's doing great jobs in this topic. And she's also a member of the organizations for the women in the developing country called OST, and having several activities in GYS since he became the member. And also he was one of the co-chairs of the Ghana Young Academy. So Priscilla, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Yensi. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. If you give me a minute, I'll share my slides. Okay, I hope my screen is visible now. I'd like to welcome everyone again to the Global Young Academies session at the Science Summit of the United Nations General Assembly. As Yensi introduced, my name is Priscilla Mante. I'm from Ghana, and I'm the co-chair representing the lower and middle income countries around the world. In the next few minutes, I'll take us through a brief introduction to the Global Young Academy, which is the convener of this session. So what is the Global Young Academy? It is a worldwide network of outstanding scientists and scholars consisting of 200 members and 366 alumni from about 100 countries. Our members are carefully selected based on a complementary mix of excellence in research and a commitment to impacting societies positively through outreach. Members typically serve a 5-year term, after which they become alumni. Now, what began as a 2010 workshop of 40 young scholars from about 28 countries has now become a group with a very diverse membership. Just as our theme for today's session suggests, we are young and global with a strong presence on 6 continents where we impact science and society. The region our members represent is determined by where they ordinarily reside rather than their nationality. So originally, 35% of our members are residents in Europe, 28% in Asia, 18.5% in North America, and 14.5% in Africa. South America and Australia represent 4.5% and then 3.5% respectively. Our alumni distribution is somewhat similar, but with the greatest of numbers coming from Asia. Annually, we invite applications from scholars who are working in any research-based discipline, including the natural and physical, as well as the social sciences, as well as arts and then humanities. But currently, majority of our members are in the natural sciences and applied sciences, but we do have very significant members also in the social sciences. GYA members are selected through a process that is very responsive to changing times and circumstances. And this has contributed to our membership evolving over time to promote a thoroughly diverse and then inclusive membership. And our membership currently has a majority of members that are female. This, we believe, is a first among many international science organizations worldwide. And later in this session, we will have a presentation on how we are able to manage and encourage this diversity and equity in our membership. GYA, like many other organizations, is a member-led one. And it is governed by an annually elected executive committee, which is made up of 11 members. It is led by 2 co-chairs and then 9 other executive committee members. For the 2022 and 2023 year, the EC is led by myself and Prosper Ngabonziza. And just as with all other things that are GYA related, we aim for our executive committee to be as reflective as possible of the diversity of our membership, representing as many regions as possible. The current executive committee members are residents on 5 continents. At the GYA, we believe that science is key to creating a better future. We also believe that young people hold that key and can unlock that great future. We are therefore that community that gives a voice to the brilliant young researchers, empowering them to bring those unique global, interdisciplinary, as well as inclusive perspectives, which are guided by evidence and reason, to produce a sustainable vision for the future. And through international as well as intergenerational dialogue, we are able to facilitate as well as promote inclusiveness in global decision-making. So we aim to support young scientists in their career development and independence. We engage in interdisciplinary, international, and intergenerational dialogue on scientific issues. We also aim to build science capacity in the developing world, as well as promote science education and science policy integration. And we are able to do this by carrying out activities which are centered around the 3 major themes, which are science and society, research environment, as well as science education and outreach. And later on during the session, we are going to hear some presentations that border on science diplomacy and then scientific excellence. Now, how do we do all these incredible things? In addition to building this global network of extraordinary young leaders in science, we often comment via position papers and opinion editorials, as well as putting out timely statements on science and science policy related issues. This way, we are able to provide the necessary perspectives of the young researcher. We are also a group that conducts research studies and also supports the work of the National Young Academies. Currently, the Global Young Academy runs 3 strategic projects, which have direct impact on the early career researcher. 1, our science leadership programs, which are essentially capacity building and mentoring programs, which are aimed at developing thought and then compassionate science leaders. Then our at-risk and refugee scholar membership initiative is one which gives a voice and then supports refugees as well as displaced researchers worldwide. And then the third, which is the Global State of the Young Scientists Project, is one which helps us to examine access that young researchers have to support mechanisms, mentoring, funding, as well as assessing things like gender equity, mobility, and then scientific productivity in higher education centers or other research environments. Since 2010, we have made significant strides at the science policy interface. As at now, we are very active members in international organizations such as the Inter-Academy Partnerships, as well as the International Science Council. The GYA is well recognized and accepted in the international science community as a valuable contributor to all issues that border around science and then science policy. Apart from these memberships, we also have formal agreements with the European Federation of Academies of Sciences and Humanities, as well as agreements with institutions like the International Network for Government Science Advance, F1000 Research, University of Oxford, as well, and the World Academy of Sciences. So moving forward, we hope that we'll be able to engage with you further beyond this session. You can find out more about us by getting in touch through our website, which is the globalyoungacademy.net, or search for us using our social media handles on any social media platform. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to having an engaging session with all of you. I'll hand over back to Yensi.
Yeah, thank you so much, Priscilla, for your great introduction. I hope that the audiences almost catch what we are doing in GYA, and of course we are going to give them more information by the topics that we are going to cover, at least part of the GYA activities. So now that's the time to start with the Science Excellence Group of the GYA, who three of them are going to represent that working group, and they will explain us why does the excellence in science is really important, and what's our definition as early career researchers in this case. So in the panel, we have Carlo Di Polici. As it comes from the name, he's Italian, and he became the GYA member in 2022. Carlo is the professor of the political economy in the University of the Rome, Sapienza, if I'm correct. And he has done several activities regarding the science excellence, and he is in the European Association for the Evolutionary Political Economy, and he will give us more information about the science excellence as his expertise. We are also going to have Pradeep Kumar also in the panel too, who is originally from India, but now he is a professor in the Department of the Pharmacy and Pharmacology in the University of South Africa, and he's also affiliated with the Advanced Drug Delivery Platform of the research unit there. And we are going also to have Yensi Flores. Yensi is one of our members who became the GYA member in 2021, and now he's the postdoctoral fellow in Ireland, and he's one of our active members. So these three people will cover the science excellence group. So please share your screen, and floor is yours. Go ahead.
I hope you can all see the slides. So thank you very much for listening to us. It's a very honor to be here, also on behalf of the other members of the working group. Our working group on scientific excellence, basically within the Global Young Academy, we focus on analyzing, discussing, and trying to improve the research system and research culture at a global level. Our starting point is the idea that universities and research centers operate in a hyper-competitive environment that risks overburdening early career and minority researchers the most. In contrast, we work for, for a research environment that allows the full expression of creativity in science, as well as one that promotes inclusion and diversity. We believe that this work contributes to several sustainable development goals because, on the one hand, in our small niche, researchers too deserve to work in a fair system, but more importantly, because a truly open science can both serve societal needs better and tackle the main challenges of our new century. Now, within this work, a crucial word is excellence. And indeed, a first range of activities of our working group, as already our chair has mentioned, is reflecting on our own behavior. The Global Young Academy aims to be a group of excellent researchers, so it's crucial that we define what we really mean by scientific excellence, especially that we try to do so in a fair and inclusive way, respecting both the diversity of backgrounds, gender, age, nationality, but all sorts of personal characteristics, including different career paths, as well as a diversity of ideas, methods, and even roles within different institutions and research teams. But our main activities are not really inward-oriented. We mostly look outside at the research system and the research culture that we work in. And in particular, recently, we have, on the one hand, organized a number of joint workshops and conferences, for example, with ALEA, one of the partners that was already mentioned, the European Federation of Academies of Science and Humanities. On the one hand, we have been included in formal and informal stakeholder meetings with, for example, the European Research Council, or we have been, since the very beginning, actively engaged in the formation of a new coalition that is being spearheaded by the European Commission, but also aims at a more global dimension. We are currently understanding if and how we can better also engage with the Latin American Forum for Research Assessment, for example, investigating the signing of the evaluations and so on. But also, possibly what we are mostly focused on from now on for the future is we have co-launched a scoping group with the Inter-Academy Partnership and the International Science Council to investigate what our three global organizations can do in the field of research assessment in particular. Research assessment is, of course, very important because it really defines what we really mean when we talk about scientific excellence on the one hand, but it also shapes the main criteria for career inclusion, for career advancement, and the possibilities for early career researchers in particular. This includes a number of specific activities about which Pradeep and Yensi will talk in a second, that we also have tried to present at some main meetings at a global level. Well, this one we are talking right now, but also a forthcoming meeting by the Inter-Academy Partnership and the worldwide meeting of the Young Academies, as well as the World Science Forum that is due to take place in a couple of months. So I leave it to Pradeep to explain to you what is one of our main activities, and then Yensi will talk about another one.
Thank you so much, Carlo, and good day, everyone. So next, one of our projects will be in November with peer review in inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility in scholarly peer review with ALEA, as well as the scholarly publishers, STM publishers, which we call science, technology, and medical publishers. So, and as we have seen from the program mentioned by Encieh, that we have presentations on ID and E already. So I will mention a bit about accessibility and what does it mean for early career researchers. So accessibility could be anything ranging from accessibility to the infrastructure, which is a very big issue in the developing world, as well as the global north and both south. So accessibility to jobs, grants, fellowships, awards, including to immigrated or displaced scientists, or the scientists who are moving from one country to other country, nationality status, as well as different resident status. So even the access to leading and decisive committees, for example, early career researchers on committees making decisions for young researchers, such as through this session at the UN General Assembly. So there are so many aspects that we can cover using accessibility. Sorry, Carlo, next slide, please. So we as a young researcher also thought, like, what if we add, or how about adding an S at the end of the idea and say any ideas? And this S can cover several aspects, for example, self-care. Okay, so we as early career researchers are always striving for excellence, the mental health balance, as well as the physical health balance, family life. So there's so much of self-care and support that needs to go into this in the career path, or even if we include the idea and the research part of it. The support part is the early career researchers getting support in getting the experience as well as expertise, not only in peer review, but even in grant writing, or even doing the research in general. And the important one is the space. Give us space. Okay, so if you give us an opportunity, give us the space to flourish at our own pace, at our own speed, and as well as we strive with our own ideas, as well as taking the global south forward with global north. So that is all from me, and I will now welcome Yensi to present her part. Thank you, and enjoy the meeting, everyone. Thank you.
Hi. So we at the Scientific Excellence Working Group, we're interested in knowing how research assessment practices influence diversity and inclusion in academia. So to gather evidence for this, our group has surveyed 238 policies used for the evaluation of promotion to professorship from 141 institutions across 56 countries, trying to obtain a balanced representation among world regions. So in our findings, we showed that these research assessment policies are biased and mainly focus on the evaluation of research outputs, funding, and teaching experience, as it can be seen on the graph on the left. Well, it undermines other skills and competencies that may be more relevant to certain research roles. Furthermore, research outputs of candidates are evaluated based almost exclusively on research metrics. Well, it doesn't give any attention to their qualities, as it's reflected in our plot on the right, where you see that they ask more for number of publications, patents, and journal impact factor. Well, zero attention was given to the quality of the publications and the impact, the real impact of the work. So, if what is more relevant in this case are the quantitative outputs, what does it say about the quality and integrity of the work? And what about the other essential skills and competencies, such as creativity and internationalization? What's more, how can a system that is asking the same from all the candidates promote diversity and inclusion? So now, it is in our plans to communicate these findings to a wider audience so that it can serve as evidence to promote change. We will also use this evidence to drive and engage in initiatives and collaborations such as those mentioned earlier by Carlo, so that our contributions reach a global scale. So with this information gathered so far, and in order to promote inclusion and diversity in our research environments, we recommend to our early career researchers and the research community in general to question and challenge the definition of excellence used by our organizations, to get involved and promote initiatives for the reform of current research assessment practices, and to get involved with young academies at national and international level. And to hiring and funding bodies, we recommend that they involve early career researchers in the process of research assessment and evaluation, as well as acknowledge the diversity of contributions to and careers in research in accordance with the needs and nature of the research. And with this, we would like to thank you for your attention, and we would also like to thank all the active members of the Scientific Excellence Working Group and the GYA, and in general, the GYA members, the staff, and the funders who continuously support our work. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, all the panelists, Carlo, Pradeep, and Yensi. It was a really great introduction to science excellence. Now we can move to the science diplomacy, and we are proud that we have also the voice of the early career researchers in the case of the policy making. Here we have Andre and Felix and Marcus. that I'm going to give the short introduction of them. Andrei Shurup is the ambassador of the digital affairs of the country of Malta. By training, he's physicist, so we are more or less in the same subject. And also he's working on the quantum mechanics, which is related to somehow to the digital science diplomacy issue. He got her PhD from the University of Southampton in UK, and now he's leading the research group, and also he's the head of the University of Physics Department of University of the Malta, and he's really active in the case of the science diplomacy in Europe and representing the small countries like Malta in this topic. And the other panelist that we have here with us is Felix. Felix became the GYA member in 2020, and he's originally from Venezuela, but now he's working in the International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology in Trieste, Italy, and he's active in the interconnection between the science and diplomacy nationally and internationally. And he applied biology studies that he has to connect the politicians and also the scientists all around the world. We also have Marcus Pusch. Marcus is the historian and political scientist by training. However, he's really active in the European Parliament, and he's responsible for the science advice in the European Parliament. And he's interested, of course, to the history and also democracy and the relation between the science and diplomacy in this case. So floor is yours, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Encieh, thank you everyone for joining us here. Good morning, good afternoon.
We don't hear you very well, Andre.
Let's try this again.
Okay.
Okay, let's try this again now. I apologize. My headphones.
Sorry, Andre, it's not, we don't hear you. Do you hear us? Andre, please. We don't hear you at all. You are unmuted, but we don't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now it's okay.
Yes, okay. I cannot hear you, but you can hear me. Okay, so I apologize for this. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night for some of us. I'm Andre, as Encieh said, and I'd like to kind of give a personal spin on this. I'd like to answer the question, why do we need to engage in science diplomacy? And I'll just end my bit by giving a sort of anecdotal experience on how I ended up working in this intersection between pure science, which is where my original background lay, and diplomacy, as it were. So I also want to say that these slides are online. Those of you who have access to the schedule can click a link there and download the slides, and there's some links in here. I'm going to skip over the abstract, of course. Why do science and diplomacy, why should they interact with each other, first of all? The easiest thing to notice, or the easiest argument I can make, is let us look at how fast science and technology are growing. I mean, think about 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the world was a very different place. And if you look at the numbers, this is basically what we see. We see the amount of literature coming out of research labs growing exponentially. And this means that even someone specialized in any specific topic is having trouble kind of keeping up with the literature. But this is not just a kind of abstract scientific issue. Even when we talk about applied technology, number of patents being granted and filed in India, which is a beautiful example in that part of the world, you see it's kind of quadrupling in just the space of 4 years. And there is no hope for anyone engaged in policy to keep up with all of these developments. And this is kind of my motivation for saying there should be an interface between us, the scientists and the technologists, and those people who are putting the policies in place and putting foreign policy in place. And this interesting intersection is what is known as science diplomacy, at least as we engage in it. So there needs to be this kind of interface between science, technology, and foreign policy. And yes, the discussion which I've just made, or the description which I've just made, sounds very abstract, but these are very real considerations. Just to take two examples, if you think about climate change, the climate catastrophe which is unfolding in front of our eyes, it affects some countries more than others. Not all regions of the world are affected in the same way. Think about Pakistan in the past month or so. There is a genuine emergency there, and this influences how countries will interact with each other, how we build our foreign policy. In other words, foreign policy needs to build on scientific knowledge. And this can only happen if the two interact with each other. Again, so here we have some kind of intersection between science and foreign policy, science and diplomacy. In a completely different perspective, think about artificial intelligence. We see everything through the lens of artificial intelligence nowadays, whether it's the news in our news feeds, whether it's what we watch on YouTube, everything else. All of these are filtered through AI and machine learning algorithms. And therefore, AI and machine learning influences nations, both internally and externally. And how do we react to this as countries? Should we somehow figure out how to react to other countries weaponizing AI, for example? These are genuine questions which need to be asked. But again, this kind of question can only be answered if we have people working at the nexus, at the intersection between science, technology, and diplomacy. So this is kind of why this is a very, very, very important field for governments to invest in and countries to invest in. Let me end on a very personal note, how I ended up participating in this field, because I am a quantum physicist by training. So let me take a very, very short leaf out of my book about quantum communications. This discussion was published in an article I wrote recently in Science Diplomacy Journal. Again, the link will be on the slide. But as an early career researcher, I am surrounded by people in my country who have just come back from completing their PhDs or postdocs and bringing with us new technologies, new ideas, new parts of academia. However, we do live in a small country, and there's very few opportunities for the country to assert leadership. And one such opportunity came a few years ago where we ended up kind of helping or working with the European Union to establish a proper framework for expanding European science and technology leadership in quantum communications. Now, this sounds like a very abstract subject, but actually it impinges a lot on cybersecurity and other parts of the digital world. And by engaging in this kind of leadership, we ended up kind of gaining a lot of soft power. So it started as a scientific concept. We brought in the diplomacy and diplomatic aspect to assert leadership and try and grow our leadership, but we ended up then giving soft power to our diplomatic corps. So it's a very interesting interplay between science, technology, and diplomacy, even when you're talking about very, very, very deep tech. So this is my kind of anecdote, how I ended up being pulled into this fascinating world. I apologize for my microphone issues, and I'm going to hand over to Felix, who will talk about the Americas. So thank you so much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andre. Thank you so much. And very interesting how you ended up in science diplomacy, in the quantum diplomacy. That's so much interesting. Well, let's talk now, please, about the science diplomacy in the Americas. It starts, I'm going to talk about the incubator group that we have created in the Global Young Academy. And it starts from the insights that in terms of scientific and economic development, America, the continent, is a diverse continent. I mean, there exist many Americas, and therefore the name of this incubator, using the Americas with S, the plural, marks this difference for the need of connection between the North, Central, and South America, also with the Caribbean, the Commonwealth countries, Amazonian countries, the Andean countries, and the Southern Cone. And the current science diplomacy efforts in the Americas tend to target specific regions separately. For instance, the US with the World or in another hand, between Latin American and Caribbean countries, and do not integrate all the Americas. The lack of knowledge about the status of the science in many Latin American countries, this also is a handicap for the integration, the scientific integration in the region. And also the current momentum that science diplomacy has gained should be harnessed, and openness to novel partnerships need to be promoted now, especially those from south to north. And in this sense, this incubator is aligned with the SDG number 17. The next slide, please. Okay. And this incubator born the last year, and we are proud to say that we have performed or organized a series of activities that you can see listed here. For instance, we have attended, or well, a member of this working group, this incubator group, sorry, has attended the Summit of the Americas during this year. Other couple of members have attended the one of the few courses on science diplomacy, 100% in Spanish for the continent, and also that we have co-organized a science diplomacy policy brief writing workshop together with the Journal of Science Policy and Governance. This was an extremely interesting and useful training workshop. And on the other hand, we have created a survey on the landscape of science diplomacy in the continent. So I will explain in the next slide what this survey is about. So the idea is of this incubator group is try to assess the current structure and initiatives that exist currently in the continent that have in their agendas the science diplomacy, and how they are designing strategies to strengthen the science diplomacy topic in their diplomatic bodies. So this survey, it is addressed to diplomats, mainly to diplomats. It was designed by us scientists, and it is addressed to diplomats across the continent. This has been a major effort, not only in designing the survey, but also in the distribution, the strategy to distribute this survey. And as such, this is one of the challenges that scientists and diplomats need to address constantly. And I'm talking about to speak the same language, how to communicate with each other. And in this incubator group, we are trying to learn and trying to bridge these gaps that currently exist. And of course, I would be happy to elaborate more in any of these topics or different topics if someone is interested. Now I will pass the screen to Marcus.
Thank you so much, Felix. I will follow up directly from what Felix said. And in the last part of our subsession on science diplomacy, I would like to reflect a little bit about how this interface between science and politics actually works. In other words, against my background also of working in the European institutions, what are the existing mechanisms and prerequisites for scientific evidence actually informing policies and diplomacy? And especially, what does this imply for early career researchers? What can be said in general terms is that usually scientific evidence enters policymaking in a more or less structured and at times also complex way. And the slide on the European Union's science advice mechanism that you have in front of you at the moment is maybe a good example. It appears, purely having a look at how many different elements are there, as fairly complex. And indeed, it is fairly complex. If you have a look until when scientific evidence actually translates into what here is described as better policy making and legislation. Having said that, there is still frequently this idea of having the one brilliant scientist that informs policymakers for the good of society. And this idea of chief scientific advisors is, I think, a bit of a, like, it reminds us of this old idea of a brilliant man informing policy making. But science nowadays has become simply too complex as that one person or even a handful of scientists could properly inform policy making. So this role of chief scientific advisor, or in the case of the EU, chief scientific advisors, usually simplifies more a body that is more a gatekeeper between the scientific communities, in the plural, and then the policymakers, here the European Commission. So what we are facing is actually a very complex, multi-layered system through which scientific knowledge enters and informs the political realm. And the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is a good example for such a structure. But as I mentioned, the science advice mechanism of the European Union is yet another one. But what does this imply now for early career researchers, as I said? Well, if you see on this slide, there is on the right-hand side, in the right corner, the European Academies Consortium called SAPEA. And this is an acronym for Science Advice for Policy by European Academies. So it's the idea of bringing together different academies of science that inform the policy making via those chief scientific advisors. And the Global Young Academy has recently become part of SAPEA, which still means that any input that we can give will not translate directly into the policy-making process, but in an indirect way. So young researchers represented by the Global Young Academy can exert also influence on policy-making in the European Union. Still, the question remains for us, what are the decisive factors for whether policies or diplomacy actually becomes informed by scientific evidence? So in other words, what are the criteria before evidence is considered as valuable and worthwhile being included in policy making? And we heard already about one crucial factor today, which is excellence. Scientific excellence, so the quality of the evidence that we produce, is certainly key, but there is yet another factor that is often forgotten, and that is trust. And that takes me to my second slide. What keeps, in a way, science and politics together is, I would say, not always a black box, sometimes it can be a black box of transfer, translation, and reconciliation processes. So it's not like that you have scientific output and politics will use it directly. There are different processes so that knowledge becomes usable in the political context. I will not get into more details here, but what is key to understand is that for this, what is now green here, this transfer, translation, and reconciliation, trust is a key factor. If you lack that trust, in the sense of that policymakers trust you, even the best excellence will not make it into policymaking. And what I tend to tell my colleagues when they start their job in the European Parliament is actually to say, in the end, what is more important than the quality is having good connections with the policymakers, in the sense that you gain their trust. Of course, this needs to go hand in hand, but in a nutshell, without that trust, even the best work will get lost along the way. This might be first sound like bad news for young career and early career researchers, because usually we are considered, seniority is often considered an element of excellence, but it means as well that since trust is so crucial, if you work hard, if you get engaged, for example, in the Global Young Academy, but also in other structures, there is a way that your voice can also be heard in policymaking and science diplomacy. On that note, we will finish now our session, and I hand back over to our chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, our science diplomats, Andre, Felix, and Marcus. It was a really great introduction about the activities of the GYA regarding the science diplomacy, and we hope that in future we have more voices of the young scientists in diplomacy and policy making. So with that, we will go to the National Young Academies. Then here we have Anindita, Bhadra, and also Yoko Shimpi. We choose these members because they were really active in establishing and promoting the National Young Academies in their own countries, India and Japan. So regarding the Anindita, she is a behavioral biologist by training, and she is working on the studies regarding the dogs, which is one of the special things that she started in India. She ran for the memberships of the GYA. Now she is the alumni, but she was the co-chair of the academy for 2 years, and she did great job while she was running this responsibility. Regarding the Yoko Shimpuku, Yoko also is one of our active members. She did great job when she was in the executive committee board of the GYA to saying that how you can establish young academies in your country if you're interested in. Yoko is a global health by training, and she got her PhD in nursing at University of the Illinois at Chicago. And now she is working, also has a good collaboration with the countries in Africa, especially Tanzania, regarding the health condition of the mothers and the children there. She did participate in several activities, and we are honored to have Anindita and also Yoko with us. So Flores is yours, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ensi. Let me start by sharing the slides. So I will start the presentation, and then Yoko will join. We'll do a bit of back and forth with our presentation, so sorry about that. So hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So good day, good morning, good evening to all of you across the globe. I am Anindita Bhadra from India, and my friend Yoko Shimpuku from Japan, as Encieh said, are going to talk about how the National Young Academies are a key to strengthening the voice of early career researchers around the globe. So the Young Academies in the world have had a good start in the past 2 decades. It started in 2000 when the Young Academy, or the first German Young Academy, was established. And then in 2010, the Global Young Academy was founded. As its mission, the GYA strengthens and nurtures young academies, national young academies across the world as part of the job that the GYA has assigned to itself. How do we do this? How do we nurture and strengthen national young academies? We equip GYA members with the necessary information for the establishment of an NYA in their country if they come from a country which does not have one already. We exchange experience between NYAs regionally and globally through the early career researchers who want to establish an academy in their countries. We help in organizing regional and global meetings of the National Young Academies. We have a toolkit on how to establish an NYA in your country, and Yoko is the one who was key in leading this, and she's going to talk in a little more detail about this toolkit. And the GYA also facilitates and supports contacts with senior academies for young researchers in the countries to start a young academy of their own. So where do we start and how do we start? So we are very happy to let you know that now we have 50+ national young academies across the globe. The 50th Young Academy of the world was the UK Young Academy, which was founded in June 2022. And soon after came the Irish Young Academy. And we know that one is being planned in Rwanda, and we hope that this year itself, we are going to see the founding of more young academies in the world. In November 2019, just a few months before the pandemic hit the world, we had 40 young academies sign an accord in Budapest during the meeting of the World Science Forum. This was coordinated by the GYA but we took inputs from all the existing NYAs. There was consensus on core principles and values of Young Academy, which is excellence, diversity and inclusivity, responsibility, knowledge-based evidence, independence and transparency, and integrity. These are core principles on which all NYAs are founded. We also had a call to action to establish a Young Academy in countries where none exists. And of course, as you know, more Young Academies have come up in spite of the pandemic over the last 3 years. And to continue to align with the core principles, and in case of established science academies, to work with and support Young Academies in their founding and in their working. Here we have a photo from the 2019 meeting in Hungary, where this declaration was signed. I will hand over to Yoko for the next part of the presentation.
Thank you very much, Anindita. Good midnight from Japan. I'm Yoko. And okay, I'd like to talk about NYA Toolkit and other support of the GYA for NYAs. And I'd like to emphasize the NYA Toolkit because it's an important output from my EC term until 2021. And generally, GYA provides technical support and advice. And one is called Blueprint. You may find on our website for establishing a Young Academy. And this NYA Toolkit is more like a technical document for establishing a Young Academy. We provide how to establish Young Academy and common issues surrounding it. And you may see the small diagram on the right side. So I collected information from GYA members and NIM members, how they created the Young Academy, and put it as a diagram. And if you want to start establishing one, you can go from the top and go down according to your needs and your situation. And GYA also facilitate and support contact with senior academies. In fact, collaboration with senior academy is a key to establish Young Academy. And organization of joint activities, for example, open science, which will be presented later on, and sharing of best practices, reasoning, and projects, and co-organizing of regional and global meeting of NYAs. Next, please. And this worldwide meeting of Young Academy is a time for NYA members gather together to discuss common issues and potential collaboration among them. The first meeting was back then in 2012 in Amsterdam, Netherlands. The second meeting was 2015 in Stockholm, Sweden. The third meeting was 2017 in Johannesburg, South Africa. The fourth meeting was the most recent in-person meeting in 2019 in Da Nang, Vietnam. And after the COVID started, we changed to the online meeting, and the first ever online Young Academy meeting was hosted in September 2020, and the second meeting was 2021. And we are now expecting the first ever joint meeting of the Inter-Academy Partnership General Assembly and the worldwide meeting of Young Academies in Arizona, US, and hybrid in November 2022. Next, please. And in 2019, GYA became a full member of the Inter-Academy Partnership, IAP, and the IAP is since then increasingly open to work with NYAs. For example, we are co-hosting the Global NYA meeting this year. The International Science Council, where GYA holds an associate membership since 2020, is inviting NYAs in 2022 in a board membership initiative. Also, regional academy networks are recognizing increasing NYAs and starting to cooperate. ALEA is a good example in Europe. And indeed, IASBS President-elect Professor Kotani attended our annual general meeting this year. Next, please. And this year's annual general meeting and International Conference of Young Scientists was co-hosted between the GYA and the Young Academy of Japan. The theme was harmonizing reason with sensibility, regenerating science for an inclusive and sustainable future. We had it in June this year, and the venue was hybrid, and we were hosting this event in Kyushu University, Fukuoka, Japan. And participants are nearly 800 from 80 countries. That was quite a lot. I was happy about this outcome. And we had a lot of discussion through plenary sessions, panel discussion, workshop, and 2 pre-conference events, including citizen science and university for all, and like creativity issues among young scientists, and the main topic of harmonizing reason with sensibility. And we also had several side events with younger generation, including high school students, university students, and graduate students. And we are developing statements right now, and it will be published sometime soon online. Next, please. And let me explain a little bit about the Young Academy of Japan. We are officially established and the third term since officially established. And we currently have 50 members and organized within Science Council of Japan. So we are also member of Science Council of Japan, which is a senior academy in Japan. And we also, but even though we are within the Science Council of Japan, we are independent organization. So we have different activities, and we can do independent decision making within the Young Academy of Japan. And we have executive subcommittee and 8 other subcommittees. And we are doing interdisciplinary and international activities for improving research environment and promoting new kind of collaboration that can result in innovation. And we created a short movie about Young Academy of Japan. And if you connect to the YouTube, you can learn more about Young Academy of Japan. Next, please. And I'd like to share a good example between NYA and Senior Academy collaboration in Japan. This in 2019, when the 4th Worldwide Meeting was hosted in Vietnam, we as Young Academy member traveled to Vietnam, and also the Vice President of Science Council of Japan attended. Dr. Miyoko Watanabe attended this meeting. It was a quite a big moment that Senior Academy member was very collaborative and very understanding of Young Academy, and actually physically joined our meeting. And then they provided many opportunities for young scientists. For example, in 2019, I was dispatched to Paris for G-Science meeting. This means the G7 Academy meeting. And in 2022, I was also a co-chair of S20. This is the G20 Science meeting. And I was given a lot more opportunities. And other members also got many opportunities like this. And I'd like to emphasize the importance of collaboration with senior scientists because discussion and output will be more inclusive and relevant for wider generations. And it encourages young scientists to develop leadership and act for public good. So I would like to ask senior scientists or senior academy to recognize and reward these activities because if the scientists are only rewarded for the publication and the grant, it will be difficult to continue this kind of activity. So I'd like to say the importance of recognition for this kind of activity and leadership. Okay, I'd like to move back to Anindita to introduce the example of India.
Thank you, Yoko. So very briefly, the example of the founding of the International Young Academy of Science. In 2014, a new president was elected in the senior academy of the country, Indian National Academy of Science, INSA, and he was interested in starting a young academy in India. So I was actually connected to him because he was my supervisor and we had a discussion. And then I was also talking to the GYA at that time because I was personally interested in the GYA and having an NYA in India. And I set up a meeting between the INSA president and the then managing director of GYA when he was visiting Berlin. And they had a very good discussion, and he set up a small team to draw up a proposal for the founding of a National Young Academy in India. He created this core committee which presented the proposal, and the good thing is this committee had an alumnus from the GYA and a member of the senior academy in the committee. So it was a very inclusive team being represented by both young and senior scientists. And then in December 2014, the senior academy passed a resolution to start the Young Academy of India, which was named INEAS, the Indian National Young Academy of Science. And then the senior academy took the responsibility of selecting the first cohort of members. They put out a call for membership to recipients of this national award that this academy gives, and they selected 20 members, founding members, based on their outreach activities, social engagement, and research excellence. And then 20 of us were just kind of handed over an academy to grow and nurture. In the years since, INEAS has really grown in strength. It has gone from 20 to a membership of 100, and it keeps having a cohort of new members every year, and a cohort of old members become alumni every year. And this photographs, these two photographs on the right just shows you, the first one is from our first AGM in 2015 with the set of founding members. And then the one at the bottom is from the last in-person AGM that we had just before the pandemic in February 2020. So you can just see the numbers, how they've grown. We have a lot of active members who are constantly engaging in activities, and many of them are actually members of the GYA, including myself. So you can see that INEAS has really grown as a National Young Academy. And not only that, we, like Yoko said, have a lot of engagement with the senior academies. India has 3 senior academies, but INSA is our parent academy, and we constantly do programs with the senior academy. In fact, during the pandemic, INSA gave us sole responsibility to conduct a large number of online events because they thought young people can handle virtual events better than senior people. We are happy to tell you that INEAS has also helped the founding of the National Young Academy of Bangladesh, and we constantly engage with the National Young Academies of our neighboring countries. We have had constant events with the NYAs of Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. And I am highlighting this because I think it's very important to have science diplomacy even within the NYAs of a region. Regional collaboration is very, very important. And of course, as important, or probably sometimes more important, than global networking between the NYAs. So we will bring our presentation on the NYAs to a conclusion here. We hope that the NYAs will keep flourishing both online and offline. The image on the left here is from the last in-person meeting of NYAs in Vietnam that Yoko mentioned. And the one on the right is the meeting of the European Network of Young Academies in 2020, which of course happened virtually. Thank you from Yoko and me.
Thank you so much, Anindita and Yoko. You were a great representative of the National Young Academies because it was one of your challenges to establish one and also running the one in your countries. And I hope we can have National Young Academies in several countries, and of course, more independent National Young Academies in future in the case of the selection and also funding the other issues that they have. Thank you so much. So with that, we will go to the last session before our break, which is going to be explained about inclusion and diversity and equity at GYA, which is going to be represented by Monica Kerda. She's going to represent several groups that they are working in this issue, including the Women in Science Working Group, Anti-Discrimination Group, and also Rainbow Group at GYA. Monica Pedra is an associate professor at the Institute of the Oceanology of Poland. She got her PhD in Earth Sciences in 2008, and she is one of the active members of the Polish Young Academy too. And I just want to mention that Monica is mother of the three kids, and 2 of them are twins. So you can just see that how she can explain about the inclusion and diversity and equity in science regarding the women too. So floor is yours, Monica, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Encieh. Good afternoon from Poland. I am very honored to be here and be able to represent GYA at this session. And I would like to talk about inclusion, diversity, and equity, which are the values that are especially important for the Global Young Academy. I'm Monica Kendra, and I'm a member of the executive committee of the GYA this year. And I'm also an oceanographer here in Poland. So our Global Young Academy vision and mission is to create science for all and science for the future. And we want to give a voice to young scientists all around the world. At the same time, it is really important for Global Young Academy to provide a safe environment for early career researchers that fosters the exchange of the scientific ideas and an open debate. To make it possible, we really need to focus on the very highly valued values such as diversity, equality and equity and inclusion, and we need to work against discrimination. And in a couple of next minutes, I will tell you how we do that internally, and also will present some of the examples of the work that is aimed for the not only for the internal use, but also for the outside, how we want to promote those values. So we start with a statement that the diversity in science is necessary for the science to be of the highest quality, to be more inclusive, more creative, and more innovative. A science that can truly be science from all and for all. This statement comes from one of our GYA focus areas on the addressing systemic discrimination. And I think it really well reflects what is the true value of the GYA, the diverse teams that gives equal opportunities and treatment for everyone. And that is regardless of our race, color, national or ethnic origin, religious or religion beliefs, gender identity or its expression, age, marital status, disabilities or medical conditions, or any other reason that is not related to the scientific merit. How do we assure implementation of those values in the Global Young Academy? Let's start with the application and the selection criteria. So we select our members based on the research excellence and also on the commitment to service and outreach. We try to advertise our call for the new members very widely to make sure that a lot of people apply, and we make sure that all applicants receive consideration and will not be discriminated against, and I will repeat that again, against race, color, ethnicity, religion, creed, sex, marital status, ancestry, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, physical or mental disabilities, or any other factor. What I think is really important that over the time, we also identify any gaps that may have happened, and we update this information to make sure that everyone is included and feels encouraged to apply. As a result, you can see that in in our members, we have representatives from all 6 continents. And also, last year in 2021, we managed to achieve the gender balance. So currently, a little bit more members are female, almost half are male. And also a few years ago, we added this option to our application form, and right now 1 member is non-binary and 1 chose not to reveal the gender. As you can see in the alumni, we had a little bit more representation of male members. So we do reach to the gender. We aimed to reach this gender balance, and last year we achieved that. We also try to make sure that our internal procedures also follow these values, and we make sure that there are no systemic biases that may result in discrimination. We want to have the best practices that will help to combat any of such systemic biases. And one of our focus area addressing systemic discrimination that was started in 2020 looks into that as well. It also works to reiterate trust in the fundamental human rights and the self-respect and worth of the human in the academia and other places. This group started with a statement on the anti-discrimination that also supported the movement of the Black Lives Matters. Later provided a lot of inputs in the Code of Professional Conduct of the GYA that I will talk in a minute more. And right now it focuses on a diversity training that will be devoted for the inclusion and diversity for the coming year. I want to stress that all of our groups, both the focus area, working groups or incubators that we have, are run by the members. And for each, we have co-leaders, usually 2 of them, that coordinate the work of those groups. So the Code of the Professional Conduct has been accepted this year. And it is a result of our internal discussions where we identified that in such a diverse group, some issues may sometimes arise. And we needed to establish guidelines and agreed procedures for the professional and responsible viewing of our members and alumni. And in case anything happens, we needed those rules to solve any problems. I want to stress that the Global Young Academy is a learning organization. So any kind of misconduct first is always approached in a way that members learn from each other. And we want to make sure that all of the members receive transparent, fair, and agreed on procedures treatment. In addition, the code also formalizes the Global Young Academy's commitment to its ethical and guiding principles, and it outlines its guidelines, regulations, and principles explicitly. Now, I would like to say a couple of words about the activities that are aimed not only to our members, but also that promote diversity outside of the GYA. And the first very active group, its work I want to present is the Women in Science. That is the group that aims to have the voice of women scientists widely heard. And this group wants female scientists to reach policy and decision makers. And also they want to create a better future for the female scientists. Also, it aims to stress the importance of female scientists in the science, in the academia, and in the world, which is not always, unfortunately, the case. One of the first example of the outputs I would like to talk about is the book on the motherhood in science and on how children change the academic careers. As Encieh mentioned, I'm also a mother of 3 children, so I know that children can change your life a lot and even more your academic path. But this book, it's about the stories that our female members shared, and they describe the positive aspects of the motherhood, but also some of the biases that or challenges that happened due to the biased working environments or some cultural and traditional expectations. Sometimes about the underdeveloped or even missing support system in the societies. And something that probably a lot of women feel a lot is the feeling of self-guilt of a working parent. You can see you can check this book on our webpage as well. Another example of the working of the Women in Science Working Group initiative is a survey that was carried out among GYA members and alumni last year about the challenges of the workplace in the science. And it was published in the GYA magazine, GYA Connections. And it is on the barriers to diversity among young scientists around the globe. And it was examining discrimination and harassment at the working place. That is maybe something that could be expected, but out of many findings, they also reported that women felt were much more likely to report being discriminated against based on their gender. But I encourage you to have a look, a more detailed look on this publication as well. Another very nice campaign of the Women in Science is a campaign that was aimed at the social media, and it started to celebrate United Nations Day of Women and Girls in Science and to celebrate women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And it started with a hashtag, "This little girl is me." And it shows some wonderful stories of our female members that talked about how, about their path from a little girl until the successful and established scientist. So you can also find these stories with this hashtag, "This little girl is me." And finally, I would like to talk about the Rainbow Working Group that started a few years ago as an incubator when we identified that there is also another minority group that is very often discriminated still in many countries due to different taboos and different cultures. And that is the group of the LGBT, so the lesbians, gays, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, and others. What this group wants to is particularly create a safe space within the GYA where we can discuss issues related to the various levels of discrimination faced by different minorities or minorities in general, and in particular the LGBTQ group. And also it is open to allies. We also aim to raise awareness, which is very much needed. A lot of LGBTQ scientists in the past and now has provided a lot of very important inputs into the science and for the society. in order to make people more aware about that, the Rainbow Group prepared a poster exhibition that was online because our last meeting was online only, where we prepared a series of posters where we showed different LGBTQ+ scientists and the achievements and also struggles. Rainbow Group also started a Rainbow Corner. That's a blog where we will in the future share stories, brief contributions of unique experience of LGBTQ+ people in academia. So these are just a couple of examples how GYA works towards increasing diversity and towards equity and inclusion. And if there is one take-home message from this presentation that I would like to give is that diversity and inclusion matters. And we really should all work together towards that and to the equal chances of all our scientists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica, for this great information regarding the several working groups at GYA. We are completely sure that the diversity and inclusion matter, and you see its effects at GYA, that with this inclusion and diversity and hopefully equity, we can reach the goals that could not be possible if we didn't have these issues in mind. Thank you so much. So we are almost going to have a break of 10 minutes, and you can stay with us because we are going to run one of the videos of the GYA regarding the science communication working group, a great job that has done with one of our alumni, Lisa Herzog. And it will be really great if you just stay and to watch the video. But before that, before going to the break, we are going to have a screenshot, virtual video, virtual picture taking. So if you can turn on your camera, it will be really great. And then our office people, Jennifer, will do that for us. Thank you so much. We just need your camera and your big smile, please.
Yeah, smile is must.
Thank you so much for staying with us wherever you are in this beautiful planet. So let's have a screenshot. The ones that they are missed, please stay with us. Great. So Jennifer, we are just going to say cheese or science, whatever you like. Just have a big smile on your faces. Thank you.
I think I got one. Thank you.
I think we must have one with a thumbs up.
Why not? It could that one also work. Yeah. Please go ahead.
And probably in my part of the world, which most of the people might be aware, it is from the Mohenjo-daro, from Pakistan, India. This sign is a sign of humbleness, sign of submission, sign of bow upon the Mother Nature and the humanity. I don't know. I love this.
Yeah,
this
thank
shows
you so much.
A human is humble. Humility is the virtue of humans.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. So thank you, everybody. You can stay with us. We are not going to close the Zoom link, of course. So please be with us. And then if you are going to have your tea or your coffee, you can also watch our video. It will be really interesting to know that what we do also for the science communication issue. And we will gather almost in 10 minutes wherever you are. So then.
And on a lighter note, people should keep their cameras open. It connects people. It engages people with people from the different part of the world. And believe me, you all are beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Today morning, my mom said to me, you are the beautiful person on earth. So a person who doesn't have any hair on the head, but my mother is saying, so mother, in the eyes of Mother Nature, or in the eyes of loving people, we all are beautiful people. Exactly. So believe you me, you all are beautiful, and it sends a positive vibe to each other. Whether we are, a student of science or what, but it's art and science both. It's a heart and brain both.
Thank you, Nawal. I hope you also have this beauty inside and outside together. which is the best combination of the human being. So please stay with us, have your coffee and tea, take a rest and some stretches, and then we will come back in 10 minutes and gather, combine again to continue the session, the other discussion that we have. Thank you so much.
And taking the advantage of this break, I would offer my services. This is my first virtual sessions in any, such type of a conference. I do attend many throughout the world, and would love to be part of any, and would love to be part of any team is being formed. And I went through the profiles of all the speakers. It was awesome. Pradeep Kumar is with a smiling face, and Anindita, Bhadra, probably they are from from India, and Miss Yoko, she all, I mean, a very inspiring profile. I mean, sometimes I feel where I was living, missing these all people.
Where are you watching this from? And how much has your world changed in the past few years? My world has changed a lot, mostly because of COVID-19. How many of you remember the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, when most of us had barely even heard about the new coronavirus and this unknown disease that it causes? Where did everybody turn to for answers? It wasn't the politicians, it was the scientists. And these people who spend most of their lives hidden away from the public eye, they were suddenly just thrown into the spotlight. And almost overnight, science became the lifeline of a world in despair. It was no longer this exclusive thing that was reserved for people in lab coats who used fancy instruments. You could overhear people in buses talking about the PCR tests and the antigens. Through this pandemic, it has become clear that science is a part of society. It holds a unique responsibility when it comes to solving many of the world's problems we're facing today. Science with Society. That's the name of our initiative. And although we started this a few years ago, the COVID-19 pandemic has made it even clearer just how important our mission is. We want to help improve the relationship between science and society. You might have noticed that in recent years, misinformation, conspiracy theories, and fake news, they have been spreading, and even more so during the pandemic. I truly believe that it's of vital importance that we as young scientists get active and we help bring science closer to society. There is a lot of brilliant research out there, from philosophy and sociology of science to the study of science communication. The issue is that other scientists often don't know about it. But before we talk about how we can do that, let me tell you a bit about who we are. I'll start with myself. My name is Shruti Mandani. I grew up in Abu Dhabi, did my undergraduate in India, and I'm currently a research fellow in material science in the UK. I love my work, and it's probably why I enjoy telling people about it, even at a pub. PubHD is an event where PhD students or postdocs from any academic discipline explain their work to an audience at a pub in exchange for a pint. I got involved because I wanted to interact with the lay audience. For me, it was the perfect place to get feedback from an entirely different perspective. And of course, I got a free pint. But before I presented my work at a pub, I tried something a little bit more challenging. I entered a national competition called the Three-Minute Thesis. The challenge was to explain my entire PhD in exactly 3 minutes to a lay audience from varied backgrounds. And it was definitely as hard as it sounds. But also, it was a lot of fun because the entire experience made me view my research from a completely different angle. 3MT is a global competition. Maybe there is one in your country. If so, I would highly recommend for you to take part. To my own surprise, I won the 3MT, and that opened up plenty of doors for me. One of them led me to the Trust in Science working group of the Global Young Academy. The Global Young Academy is an interdisciplinary global academy with members from all over the world that unites and gives a voice to young scientists from around the world. In the Trust in Science working group alone, there are people from around 20 different countries. During their discussions, the members of this working group realized that the relation between science and society, it's a global problem. Science with Society is a global initiative, and we hope to reach people from all over the world. When we're talking about science, it's not just about natural science or engineering, mathematics, and so on. Our concept of science includes social sciences and the humanities, because we believe we need them all to tackle the problems our societies are facing. Think about the COVID-19 pandemic. It didn't just affect our health. It affected our whole way of living, education, economics, the arts, everything. We need the natural sciences, the humanities, and the arts if we want to heal as a society from the aftermath of this pandemic and prepare for future disasters. And every scientist can help bring science closer to society. But we as young scientists, we're in a special position. We grew up with social media. We know how to communicate with the world on our fingertips. And so for us, it's much easier to level the playing field by being approachable to lay audiences. The younger you are, the better you can remember your experiences with being a beginner in your field. And that often makes it easier to form that connection with the lay audience. I truly believe that if more of us scientists engage in outreach, we can try and regain that trust in science. If people get to know you and your work, they will trust you more. And communicating something that you really love, like your research, it can be quite fun and also gratifying. Our video tutorials will show you some useful tools in building these skills and highlight the importance of developing them. We have 2 sets of video tutorials and quite a bit of bonus material. The first one is about ethics and scientific integrity, because we believe that it's crucial to critically reflect on our own responsibilities if we want to bring science closer to society. For the second set of videos, we have partnered with the German National Institute for Science Communication. You will learn from their experts how effective science communication works. So let's put together what belongs together: science with society.
Hello, everyone, again. I think we can start the second part of our session. And we are going to have 3 different topics. And at the end, we are going to have Q&A. We are going to start with the North-South and South-South collaboration among the GYA members, and in general talking why this kind of the collaboration are important for science. So we are going to have Robert Lepenies and also Ibrahim Zidi Zakari. He's going to tell us about their collaboration that they had done under the Sasha Kagansky grant, that they will explain us what is this grant and how you can involve on that. And just short introduction about our panelist. Robert Lepenies is alumni of the GYA. He joined and he did great jobs in the GYA doing several activities. Robert is a professor for the patriotic economics and also he's active in the science diplomacy. Recently, it's a really hot news. He became the president of the Karlshochschule International University in Germany. So congratulations, Robert, for this great achievement. And she was also reviewer for the 2019 Global Sustainable Development Reports of the JRC and active in these kind of the topics. Regarding the Ibrahim is also the alumni and he's from Niger. And by training, he was working on the data science projects, and now he's the professor in the University of Niger. And they did a great job with Robert regarding the North-South collaboration, and they will tell us more about that. Flores, yours, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I will talk a little bit about how the Global Young Academy ignites global interdisciplinary cooperation of ECRs, so that is early career researchers. And I will do that together with my dear colleague, Ibrahim Zidi Zakari. So there is something at the Global Young Academy, which is now called the Sasha Kagansky Interdisciplinary Grant. And since 2014, the Global Young Academy has awarded 9 international and interdisciplinary teams to receive a grant, and it enables scientists from across the world to work together. And we wish that more scientists, more young scientists had this chance to collaborate across borders. And it's not just money that's necessary, it's also visas and other framework conditions that would allow young scientists to truly collaborate across borders in an innovative and sustainable way. But since 2021, the grant was renamed in the honor of the late Sasha Kagansky, who was a member of the Global Young Academy and the second recipient of that North-South grant, who was just a brilliant member of the Global Young Academy. And I can just encourage you to, if you don't know him already, to follow his work and his enthusiasm and initiatives that he worked on, specifically when it comes to saving biodiversity and our natural resources. So here's a picture of this first grant, which was named Connecting Epigenetics and Natural Resources between Mauritius and the UK/Russia. Now, the idea of this grant is to connect young scientists from low and middle income countries and high income countries to strengthen interdisciplinary approaches, help small scale innovative approaches. And it's not a prerequisite to involve the arts and artistry in these projects, but in the spirit of Sasha, it often is part of these small interactions. So I will give you a little bit of an overview of some of the projects that have been running in the last years, and then Ibrahim will tell you a little bit more in depth about a very recent one on air pollution. So here's a list of the interdisciplinary grants that you can all look up on the Global Young Academy website. And just to briefly mention the last 3. So the first and current one is tracking technology during mealtime conversations in family in a comparative analysis where we look at, where these researchers look at Alexa picking up conversations during mealtime, which is highly interesting, I think, between Norway and India it is. And last year's, and currently ongoing still, the idea of looking at how young scientists experience COVID and providing a narrative account of how COVID has affected young researchers. So this is a grant project that was given out last year and is still ongoing too. And then 3 years ago, the first the first project related to COVID was the project that looked at how art is changing and is reflecting the COVID pandemic from a truly global perspective. So also check out the respective website where all these wonderful artworks or inspiring or shocking artworks are collected. So just a couple of words about this one project that Ibrahim and I and Lisa Herzog and others were working on, which is called Citizen Science for Reducing Exposure to Urban Air Pollution. As you know, urban air pollution is one of the biggest environmental harms and killers that we have and one of the biggest challenges we face. And here we asked ourselves, how can citizen science projects be concrete, ethically informed, collaborative, and effective? And effective in what? Effective in contributing to sustainability transformation. And you see on the top already, from Germany to Niger to Mongolia to the Netherlands, that's what we try to do. And I wish many more young scientists could engage in such collaborative, inspirational projects that just shape us and shape our scientific careers to come. So just a couple of pictures for you to get a sense of what these projects would look like. On the left, you see contemporary problems with air pollution in Germany, in a city of Leipzig, which was very much depending on car traffic being one of the main sources. But now, as we are in an energy crisis, increasingly people will start firing up ovens, burning wood, and we will have other air pollution problems that we thought we kind of could leave behind. At the same time, Ibrahim was working with cooking stove and sustainable cooking sources, and we were kind of comparing what types of air quality pollution problems we had in different contexts at the same time. And on the right-hand side, a new project with Majardal in Mongolia that has just started. So please just visit the website to see kind of a comparison of different air pollution projects that emanated from this small collaboration. And with that, I will hand the word to my dear colleague, Ibrahim Sidi Zakari, who will talk a little bit more about the Air Pollution Project.
Okay, thank you so much, Robert, and good afternoon or morning to everyone. So it's a pleasure for me to present you some aspects of what have been introduced by Robert. As you can see, you have the link at the bottom of the presentation. And through this project, we have tried to investigate the potential of citizen science in terms of advancing SDGs related pollution in Niger and in Germany. So by taking into account some points like taking into account the concrete aspect, the ethics, and the collaborative, as well as the effectiveness. And it's a project who I remember begin, how can I say, during the AGM in Halle, I think it's in 2019, yeah? I think it's during this AGM. I still
Ibrahim, I think we lost your voice. Is that correct?
So I think the network is not very stable. I will switch off maybe the video. So I'm saying that it's really a collaborative project, and we have worked very hard with Robert. I still remember we sometimes going beyond 12 maybe PM, etc. And it's not easy. And it's a project we also, within the project, we also collaborated with Lisa Herzog also. And next, please, Robert. Robert, can you hear me? Okay, great. So in terms of collaboration, I can say we can classify in terms of the north-south, north-north, as well as south-south collaboration. So in terms of outcomes or results, I can say that throughout our project, I visited the UFZ, it's the Leipzig Helmholtz Center for Environmental Research. Thanks to Robert and the team at the UFZ who make this possible. And we also tested the latest generation of Flow2 sensors for measuring, for example, ultra-fine particles like PM2.5, PM1, particulate matters, which are very harmful. And also we participated to some events like the Berlin Conference on Citizen Science and SDGs, I think it's 2 years ago. And of course, we have published some papers and also initiated some collaboration with private sectors who are involved in providing real-time air quality data worldwide. So in terms of South-South collaboration, for me, the project is very important as at the local level is also foster, how can I say, collaboration between my department, which is the Department of Mathematics and Computer Science, and the Department of Physics. And as the air pollution issue, you see, is a kind of multidisciplinary science, and you need to involve, how can I say, a lot of competencies and a lot of skills. First to understand the phenomenon or trying to, and also the technologies for monitoring air quality, etc. So we also participated to the IASBS conference in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, which is in West Africa, so 2 years ago, and this participation led to a scientific publication. And also the GYA nominated me, as well as some members of the GYA, to the Network of African Science Academies, the NASAC regional report on health and climate change. So there is an important aspect which is related to the impact of air pollution on health. Of course, we also organize some public conferences, capacity building workshop, etc. And also conducted some small-scale surveys which are related to air quality monitoring and data crowdsourcing. Roberts have already give you an overview with the image or the photos of cookstoves, etc. So it is a kind of citizen science project we have initiated with our students to see how this can be feasible in a very scarce environment like Niger, where we have very few data which are related to air pollution. Next, please, Robert. So now what are the next steps? And as we are, even if we are alumni, we are still very active, and it's a real an honor and a pleasure for us to see that the project is, how can I say, is moving forward. And and 3 years now after we begin this project, I think we have a lot of things to do and to say. For example, in terms of bringing citizen science perspective, for example, into regional reports, and also awareness raising about the importance of machine learning and artificial intelligence in terms of environmental monitoring. And also this project, maybe I forget to mention that the idea was how we have brainstormed the project as part of our working group on citizen science for the SDGs. And we, as part of the working group, we are still continue to see which areas we can focus on for future. And also it's important in some African countries like Niger to improve the access to real-time air quality data, which is a big challenge across the world. And also it's important to pursue the collaboration with some regional research centers like the Kigali Collaborative Research Center. We have been invited to participate to a workshop, but unfortunately due to COVID-19, this workshop has been postponed, and we hope that maybe this will come again. I think this is some points I want to share with you, and looking forward to give you more details during the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert and Ibrahim. Even the way of your presentation shows that how collaborative was the project between you. It shows that you did a really great job there, and I hope that we had enough budget to support more such kind of the activities in GYA, and hope in future we can raise more funding for such kind of the collaboration, which is really, really important for science. So with that, we will go to the topic of the at-risk scholars, which is really close to my heart for several reasons. Maybe we can talk about it in Q&A session. So we are going to have in these sessions Saja Al-Zubi and also the Jennifer Plow from the office. As I mentioned, that without the help of the office, we cannot do anything in GYA. So Jennifer will tell us also more about this project. Saja is going to start the session. Saja is a development economist, and right now she is the lecturer in the University of Halifax, Canada. She was a professor in Syria, but due to the war in 2011, she forced to move her beloved country. And for sure, she is the right person to talk about the at-risk scholars initiative that we have in GYA, and we are really proud of that, because each year, one of our members, people who get selected as a GYA members, comes from the at-risk scholars. So if you know anyone who is really at-risk scholar, you can inform them that we have such kind of the selection that's completely different running way. Unfortunately, the deadline for this year member selection is finishing today. It's already finished, I think, in the UTC time. So for next year, you already have 1 year to tell the people that they are really interested to become GYA member, and also for the at-risk scholars group. So we are going to have Saja and also Jennifer from the office. Jennifer is at the senior project officer at Global Young Academy, and his background regarding the studies is in the international relations. I think that he got her BA from the Boston University in US, and European studies from the University of the Hamburg in Germany, and she worked in research and teaching the fields of the urban social studies at University of the Weimar, Germany, before joining the GYA. So Flores is yours, please go ahead.
Thank you, Encieh. Hello, everyone. Thank you for this introduction, and I'm so happy to be with you today to talk more about Global Young Academy and At-Risk Scholars Initiative. Actually, in the beginning, I would like to talk more about, or to give you a background about who is the scholars at risk. So there's no accurate statistics about those scholars who had to flee their home countries, but in 2017, it was estimated by around 10,000. Yet the ongoing conflict crisis in the last decade, as what we have witnessed recently in Ukraine and Afghan, increased this population. So in 2020, just 5 countries accounted for 2/3 of all refugees all over the world. Syria for almost 7 million, Venezuela, Afghanistan, South Sudan, and Myanmar. But in Syria alone, there might be more than 2,000 academics among those refugees. So at-risk displaced and refugee scholars had to flee their home countries due to conflict, war, and political or religious persecution, looking for a proper, safe, and scientific environment. These intellectuals are perceived as a threatening to regimes and extremist groups and are targeted directly as a result. In the country that hosts them, they struggle to gain access to or acceptance within the professional networks needed to sustain their research careers. This poses a serious threat to scientific discovery and undermines the rebuilding capacity of war and conflict countries. Those scholars face financial, economic, and social challenges in exile, in addition to the new culture, language, environments, and tradition. But women have more challenges in a fully new environment where no relative or connections to balance between motherhood and work. This combination of challenges, in addition to the trauma they had faced in their home or on the way to reach the new home, might affect their mental health. This increases the obstacles to adapt to the new environments. Here is the importance of organizations and universities that adopt protecting displaced scientists or at-risk scientists and roll out a coordinated advocacy campaign to support and integrate these scientists. For that was At-Risk Scholars Initiative among GYA, which was founded in 2017 by Global Young Academy alumni Teresa Dublonu and Carlo to save and protect the displaced scholars and their knowledge. The goal of this initiative is to enable the reintegration of exceptional early career at-risk scholars into research through a mentorship program developed and led by Global Young Academy. The objective of this initiative has two main aims. First, to contribute to at-risk scholar reintegration into scholarly work environment and support the development of research skills and connections relevant to their host countries by connecting at-risk scholars to mentors from Global Young Academy or National Young Academy who helps them to build connection in their new environment, supporting the development of specific professional skills such as knowledge about research, funding structures, CVs, preparation, and grant writing through workshops, online or in-person workshop, fostering through mentoring and discussions the development of skills that all young researchers need to navigate the academic world. For example, defining one's own role, networking, finding a good work, life balance, learning how to understand and navigate cultural differences, and etc. The other goal or the other aim is to support exceptional early or mid-career at-risk scholars in developing competitive membership applications to the Global Young Academy and all national academics. Or national young academies. Professional networks like young academies provide critical opportunity for scholars to collaborate and engage with peers around the world. Actually, we work here in this initiative with partner organizations to advance its aims and to identify promising post PhD or scholars in any research-based disciplines, including the sciences, medicine, engineering, social science, and the arts and humanities, who are approximately 30 to 43 years old and are currently residing on foreign country because of safety issues in their home country or because there are asylum or refugee and the new countries. Yes, thank you. So now just to mention that we have, as I just have mentioned, we work with collaborate with partners. So our collaborating organizations are distinguished and prestigious organizations like Scholars Rescue Fund, Scholars at Risk, University of Oxford, and in particular Wolfson College, CARA, and in many of these initiatives and organizations, including Science in Exile initiative as well. So next one, please. So in terms of outcomes, I will take part to talk about the mentorship program. And then Geneva will go through the other outcomes of these initiatives. So actually mentorship programs, to start with definition of this, mentoring is a process for informal transmission of knowledge, social capital, and the psychological support received by the recipients as relevant to work, career, professional development. So in this initiative, since 2018, more than 35 mutually beneficial mentoring relationships between members of the Global Young Academy Initiative and at-risk scholars have been established, leading to increased professional networks, connections, and opportunities for at-risk scholars. More than 17 active mentoring relationships are ongoing, and some have graduated from the program as of this September of 2021. Through our endorsement program, more than 5 at-risk scholars have been successfully selected as a new Global Young Academy members over the 3 selection rounds. After a 3-year pilot in which selected mentees were nominated for the Global Young Academy membership. Global Young Academy now is creating a permanent alternative selection path to membership for 1 membership slot per year through a confidential applications process. So this is very, very rich program, and it there are many things to talk about and to subscribe, and you can go through the website to learn more about this and about the goals and the ends of this mentorship and program and the fruits of this program. But here I just wanted to go briefly about the objective of this mentorship program, how to contribute to, how contribute to mentee reintegration into scholarly work environment, and to promote the development of mentees professional skills relevant to their new environment, and how to support exceptional young at-risk scholars. Actually, the distinguished thing in this program, not as I'm a co-leader of this initiative, but just because many experiences and many stories that I have learned about this, it's the relationship between mentors and mentees, and which is built on friendship and the trust between those two let's say partners, and how they can build their friendship and the trust, and to get more benefits and more useful information and knowledge. Actually, the main thing that also this mentorship program have goals and fruits on the short and long term, but the main thing here is confidential and the trust that's built between the mentors and mentees, and how they can try to help their mentees, not even in their professional or in their building their new career in exile, but as well as building their social, economic, and their life to make this balance in work and between work and their personal life. So this is for now, and Jennifer, it's over to you, please.
Yeah, thank you, Saja. Yeah, and thank you for your introduction. And I can just confirm from working with the many dedicated members in this initiative over the last few years that mentoring is, I think, at the individual level, one of the most impactful parts of this program and really important. So in addition to mentoring and the membership path that Saja described, this initiative has also held different kinds of development workshops, different formats and different topics, some in person, and lately over the last couple of years also we've developed, or the group has developed, some online formats. Just one general takeaway from that is that the in-person workshops are invaluable for their networking opportunities and for people to intensely discuss topics and ask questions, and also realize there are other people with the similar questions in their country with them. But online workshops also have the great benefit of being able to reach a wide audience if you have a specific topic. So one workshop that was held last year in collaboration with the US partner SAR and Scholars at Risk and Scholar Rescue Fund, called Career Options Beyond Academia, had a very specific focus, but was able to reach interested people online in that topic. And I think that's a good opportunity for future models. Individuals and teams and the whole team have come together in different constellations to publish and publish articles, raise awareness, and do other media work on the topic, which I think is also really important, which we also do in cooperation with our partners. But this is maybe one of the most important slides. The GYA program is fairly small. I think it's still impactful to the individuals that we are able to reach. And I think that's maybe one of the most important takeaways for anyone else thinking, what can they do? Because you can do something. And that's one of the aims, I think, of this program, is to have a ripple effect, to demonstrate that something small, starting small is possible, and doing something small is possible and can have an impact. So if you're an early career researcher or a researcher at a university or an institution, you can encourage your institution to host someone, an at-risk scholar, through one of the fellowship programs listed by our partners, for example, which you can find on our website, or in your country, or universities can start their own programs. We've had members who have successfully lobbied at their university to start their own at-risk scholar support program. If you're from an institution, you can join the Scholar Rescue Fund Alliance and receive more information and be well connected through them. And yeah, mentoring is also really valuable. So even if it's important to have a context and support, I think, if you become a mentor, but we encourage you as young scientists, but also science organizations, to consider what small ways you can positively impact at-risk scholars. And we're happy to answer questions if you want to contact us at any time. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer and Saja, for this great introduction. We hope that we never have any conflicts in this world to have at-risk scholars, but unfortunately these days with the war in Ukraine, we see that this topic becomes really, really hot one, and I hope that gives more attention to this issue regarding the scientists, especially the young ones, that they have more challenges to find position when they leave their home country. So thank you so much. We will continue that discussion probably in the Q&A. So the last topic that we will go is going to be devoted to the open science, and Natasha Gownaris will going to represent the open science one. Natasha is a professor of the marine ecology at Gettysburg College in USA, and she joined the GYA in 2020, and she's interested to the diversity in STEAM and teaching students data literacy skills. And she will tell us that how she gets interested in the topic of the open sciences, why open science is really important for the case of the science, especially now that we have several challenges in this planet to solve. So we really need to share the data and science that we have and more collaboration. So Tasha, floor is yours.
Hey everyone, just share my screen here. All right. Everyone can see my slides okay?
Yeah, everything is fine.
Great. All right, so thank you for the introduction. I am the co-lead of the Open Science Working Group, and I kind of entered into interest in open science through interest in open data. I use a lot of large open data sets in my research, and also due to an interest in open educational resources. So I joined this working group. I'm still learning a lot, and a lot of what I'm going to talk to you today is about this lack of training and awareness in the different facets of open science. So the Open Science Working Group is one of the focus groups at the Global Young Academy. We are interested in garnering and voicing young researchers' views on scientific output should be disseminated, on investigating challenges and opportunities associated with open science mandates, and on promoting open science mandates. We also have a global working group on open science that includes members from 25 national young academies. So the work I'm going to talk to you about today is work that was collaboration between the Global Young Academy and national young academies through this global working group. So I'm going to talk with you mainly about barriers to open science participation among early career researchers through a study that we did in this working group. And then a little bit about equity in open science and one of the initiatives one of the GYA members is leading or is a part of on more equitable open access models. So I want to start off by just thinking about open science in terms of what stages of the scientific process this relates to. And I think a lot of us, when we think about open science, our focus is mainly on this one aspect of open science, which is publication and open access publication. And even then, a lot of times what we focus on is gold open access publication. So these authors pays models of open access. However, open science really exists throughout the scientific life process, and at each stage of the life process, you can be making decisions that make your research more open. So in the study design and tracking phase, there's pre-registration of research and open processes and notebooks that document your research openly. In the data collection stage, there's citizen science, open hardware, open software, and open data. In the publication phase, there's open access, also open peer review, and open educational resources, and then citizen science in the outreach phase. So we were interested in how aware members of the Global Working Group were of these different facets of open science, again, instead of just focusing in on publication and open access, and then also on whether or not they used these. And this was a survey we implemented, and you can actually, if you scan this here QR code, it'll bring you to that paper. It was published earlier this year in CoData. You can see my co-authors down at the bottom here. It's from 7 different countries. Our team represented or came from 7 different countries, and again, represented members from both the GYA and NYAs. So what we did was we sent out a survey that broke down the open science life cycle into these different steps. And we asked members of this global working group whether they were aware of that facet of open science. So they were rated from a 1 being I've never heard of this, to a 5 being I'm an expert on this. We asked them whether they used that practice, and then we asked them to list any obstacles. And we also asked them whether or not they were comfortable with us sharing quotes. So we had this for each of those facets that were on that previous slide. And now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our results, because I think they're pretty striking. One of the things I want to mention before I bring up the slide of results is that everyone who completed the survey was a member of the GYA or the NYA, and many were members of this global working group on open science. So in theory, these are people who are relatively relatively informed on what open science is. So what did we find? These are all 32 of our participants. We had participants from 14 different countries. 23 were in, most of them were in academia, but some were in industry or non-academic jobs. Most worked in STEM-related fields, but we also had social scientists and humanities who responded to the survey. And again, all were GYA or NYA members. And so what you'll see here is for each of these parts of the process, all the way from pre-registration through open publishing, so open peer review, open publishing, and then out through outreach, each participant gave a score of how familiar they were with that topic. So we see here that the score ranges from 1 to 5, again, 5 being really strong familiarity. And one of the things you'll notice is that there's a lot of light blue in these early stages of that open science life cycle. So that was one of our big findings, was that the earlier stages of the open science life cycle actually have much lower familiarities. Whereas the things that people are most familiar with are open publishing and open review, right? Those publication stages. Now, the reason why this is a bit concerning is because doing open science at these earlier stages really makes your science much more reproducible and really helps to promote trust in science, right? And that also helps to create more space for open science later in the process. So just as an example, if you use pre-registration and open processes and keep really good track of your research in an open way, then you're probably much more likely to also publish your data, because if you publish your data, folks will be able to go back to your open notebooks or your pre-registration and have a really good idea of what those data represent and how to reuse them. So these early stages are really important at setting up a good foundation for open science throughout the entire process. But most scientists, even ones in our global working group on open science, are not really familiar with these early stages. Similarly, if we look at use of open science processes, we can see that the use of these earlier stages of the open science life cycle is pretty low. The most commonly used open science practice is open publishing, and we'll talk a little bit more about how that can be problematic later on. But a lot of these processes, people are still not implementing in their research. So we're really interested in, again, tracking familiarity and interest, but then also collecting some information on the barriers. So what did we find on the barriers at these various stages? So for study design and tracking, and these were all early career or mid-career researchers, so between generally the age of 30 and 45. So study design and tracking, pre-registration open processes, there requires anticipation of workflows that early career researchers don't always have, fear of scientific vulnerability of, maybe not having good ideas if you're pre-registering them, or of being scooped. So someone's stealing your ideas. We had people mention that in the barriers. It takes a lot of time to do these things, and we're not really incentivized to do them, right? We're really only incentivized to publish, at least at many institutions, although this is changing in some places. Then the biggest thing is a lack of awareness and training, and you'll see that come up in each of these facets. So in terms of data collection, there's a lot of scientists that responded were unsure of the uncertainty of, or scholars who responded were unsure of the relevance of these tools. There was a fear of using non-traditional data and question of who benefits from things like open data. There were restrictive policies in some cases. It required very specific skill sets for certain things like citizen science. And again, a lack of incentives and a lack of awareness and training. And you'll see those ones show up each time. In terms of publication, there were some scholars who were worried of retribution or embarrassment if they gave a negative open peer review, for example. Again, questions of who benefits and restrictive policies in some cases, time and funding limitations, particularly when it comes to open access publishing, and then a lack of incentives and training. And then outreach, again, some some people were uncertain of the relevance, and in some cases, a lack of community ties can make it hard to do this outreach. The time commitment with the lack of incentives and the lack of awareness and training. And just to share some of the specific quotes that came out of this. So we had a lot of quotes in terms of the barriers to implementing open science that were things like, I have never heard of it before, or finding the time to learn the tools has been a major barrier, or I still feel very uncertain about the meaning in this, or how it might pertain to my research. So there was, again, the biggest, I think, hurdle that we're facing in terms of implementing open science and making that the norm is really a lack of awareness and training. So one of the things we recommended was that training programs in open science become integrated into graduate program training, just like there has been a big push to do so with science communication skills. So really starting students on this early, I think, can have a huge impact. And of course, when you use open science practices yourself, you are going to train the next generation of scientists in that way. So we can really have these knock-on impacts by training young scientists in open science best practices. And again, of course, that makes science more reproducible, more transparent, and more collaborative, and if done the right way, more inclusive. There were also a lot of concerns about being scooped or robbed of work. And a lot of concerns about basically not being incentivized. When we get going to promotion, there's not that much focus on whether you're using open science practices and publishing your data. And a lot of it comes down to how many papers you have and the impact factor of the journal they're in. So a lot of people were very validly saying, okay, I would love to do this and spend time on it, but it's frankly time I don't have when it's not going to go towards my promotion. So changing the culture of science and incentives. Another thing that came up here was, again, this fear of being open in terms of being criticized, but also in terms of retribution if you, in open peer review, criticized others' work. So changing the culture behind science and the incentives on our promotion would help with this too. And then the last is just equity in open science, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in the next couple of slides. So there were a few people who mentioned, particularly in relation to open publishing, that was pretty limited to organizations and countries that had the funding to do that. And then in terms of open educational resources, a lot of this content is in English. And then there's a lot of concerns, of course, about open data and how those data get used and who benefits from those data, and who is trained to use open data sets. And so there is still a long way to go in terms of equity in open science, in terms of that becoming a well-adopted practice. So we have a lot of work to do. Again, even among our relatively informed group of people on open science, there was pretty low uptake and knowledge of these practices. And the biggest three things were a lack of training and awareness, science, culture, and incentives, and equity or a lack thereof in the current open science ecosystem. So alongside this paper, there was another team that worked on the paper that focused on this question of equity, and the paper was Open Science for Whom? So you can also read that paper in CoData, and the co-authors are down here at the bottom. And they were particularly focused on how open science does or does not contribute to SDG 10 to reduce inequality within and amongst countries. And the main issues that came up throughout this discussion paper was gatekeeping and publishing. So not just about article processing charges, but there's a big global inequity in who publishes where. A lot of this has to do with the dominance of English and how that influences, how we assess publications that come to peer review, and also things like internet bandwidth, right? Like not everyone has the capacity to access, again, these data and things like that. So how do we, this paper really focuses on how we try to get past some of these issues to make the science system more equitable. And I also wanted to bring up one other project related to this idea of open publishing and article processing charges. And this is from a collaboration between the Young Affiliates Network and the Argentine Young Academy. I was not personally involved in this project, but it seems like a really important one. And it basically focused on inequities in open access publishing at a global level. And here, there was a specific case study in Argentina that the team basically found that article processing charges cost between 35% and 130% of the average national research grant budget in Argentina. And, you know, we know too that open access publications are more likely to be cited. And so this kind of just fuels these inequities because not everyone can afford to publish open access. And that kind of, again, creates these knock-on effects that can actually make inequities in the system larger rather than smaller. So this team asked, what can we do about this? And they came up with a statement on basically coming up with a game plan for reducing these inequities that included establishing a dialogue among the scientific community, policymakers, and representatives for a more equitable model of OA, drafting a global agreement aimed at enforcing equitable access to publishing in open access journals, and moving away from this author pays open access, which is just not really feasible for a lot of countries and a lot of scientists. Create a global economic containment network to financially support the least developing countries, to strengthen national scientific research and development systems, and then set up a network of existing or new diamond journals from developing countries aimed at promoting non-commercial open publishing practices with clear and transparent regulations and strong peer review processes. So this QR code will take you to that. And if you are interested in reading more about this statement, it's actually been signed on by 17 Nobel laureates and by over 30 international organizations and academies. So if you're interested in this issue of unequal open access, please do check out this statement and see how you can get involved. And that's all I have. So I wanted again to just kind of talk about some of the barriers we're facing to, you know, open science, which we know will support a lot of these sustainable development goals, but only if we do it in a way that is equitable. And that's something we're currently facing.
Thank you so much, Tasha, for this great talk and explaining us about the open science and the activities that you already have. We hope really that in the future we can have a great platform and strategy for open science in any aspect, especially for the low and middle income countries that they are really challenging with the data and the other issues regarding open science. Also the publication issue that it's going to be for them really somehow the budget problem to publish in the journals that they are not supporting open science. Thank you so much for that. So with this last talk, we almost finished the presentations. Thank you so much, all the speakers. You did a great job and I'm really proud of you. So now we have almost 20 minutes for Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can put in chat, or you can raise your hand and you can unmute, and also you can even turn on your camera if you have any questions to ask. We will be really happy to give more information regarding the activities, or even talking in general about the challenges of the early career researchers in science and how they can do for better world. Personally, I have several questions, but I prefer to give the floor to the attendees. So let me maybe just start to break the ice to somehow. One of my questions goes to the at-risk scholars initiative. As I said, that it's really close to my heart because somehow it means that I'm not at-risk scholar because I'm not a refugee and I'm not a displaced one. But the point is that maybe some of you are aware about the effects of the sanctions on science, especially that now we hear the sanctions on Russia. And as an Iranian who is living under these sanctions for years and years, I can really understand how problematic it could be for the scientific collaboration. And I just want to know your ideas, if you want to know. Are you really agreed about scientific sanctions? Do you think that it's really necessary to have such kind of a sanction? apart from the economic one? And what's the proposal? Who is doing that? So are they really allowed to do such kind of the sanctions, abandoning some scientists just because of their nationality and no way that they cannot leave their countries if some conflicts happen? Do you think it's fair or not? And if it's unfair in general, what we can really do to stop it? Because we know that this will, you know, avoid people to have an open science in general. And we know that as a scientist, science has no borders, but these sanctions put us, some of us, away from the scientific collaboration. So I'd be really happy to hear about your ideas and see that what we can really do with this complicated issue. Saja, please go ahead.
Yeah, maybe Jennifer will go. I will let you, the board, Jennifer, to talk more about what we can do. But actually, yes, thank you for this question, Encieh, because it's really important issue about sanctions, bans against scholars. Actually, what I recognized through my experiences, and many experiences actually, as I'm a Syrian originally, I have my have a Syrian nationality, and after I have been awarded with some awards, international and regional, and awards and some fellowships, all of those, many of those have been cancelled or withdrawn just because of my nationality, and then I recognize that these sanctions actually target scholars and civil people even more than people who should be targeted with these sanctions, and like politicians or whatever. So for sure it's not fair, and I'm always talking about this issue that should be exceptional, should be exceptions for those scholars who, for example, I'll give you a very brief example, and then I will let the floor for Jennifer to talk. For examples, before those sanctions against Syria, I have applied for the American visa, for USA visa, and I just got it like this. Yeah, it was very, very easy. Even I applied, my application wasn't completed. They just called me because I was a university fellow, postdoc fellow at that time, and North Carolina University. And they just called me, please complete your application to go through the process. And usually they don't do that, even with other people, not for Syrians only. But after sanctions, things got changed in a horrible way, that not only it's not in terms of visa, it's not in terms of fellowships, it's not in terms of, it's more than this. Even there are many things beyond this. So even if you got the visa, even if you got the fellowship improvement or the award approval and everything, maybe the officer migration, the migration officer at the airport will not let you get in. So it's a bit, it's not fair, and it's really a very important obstacle against scholars, diversity, and the scientific environment. Jennifer, if you want to add something, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Saja. I can just add that it is a really good question, and I think it's important for scholars, scientists to discuss it. And the GYA positioned itself fairly early on with the message, okay, we see that bigger institutions are canceling scientific cooperations, but at the level of cooperation of individual scientist to scientist, the GYA wants to continue working with our Russian members, and we support continued collaboration across this network. In general, I think it's really complicated. I would like to actually ask Marcus to maybe say something from the perspective of science diplomacy.
Yeah, also just to come in, I mean, do you mean in terms of science diplomacy, how it is debated, or are you more asking for my personal view? So
maybe a little bit of both.
A little bit of both. Yeah, because I mean, I see it also a little bit live, you know, in the debate on, we had it very recently working in the European Parliament. So how to deal with at-risk scholars, you know, from Ukraine, from Russia, from Belarus. And, you know, there are a little bit the two schools, you know, the one saying, you know, kind of, we should make exceptions and, you know, we should allow kind of for scholars still to work in Western countries and so on. And then there are the others that say we need to be principled, because it's always extremely hard, you know, in those regimes to distinguish, and we cannot afford to do it. Personally, I think if we start excluding scholars, but this is really like my personal view, I think this is definitely, we're on the wrong track of doing this. And at-risk scholars deserve, you know, every support they can get, even if it might require more work, you know, just to say out of principle, there are sanctions and we have to impose them on anyone, you know. I personally don't see it's the right way, but in politics, I think the picture is mixed, and there are many more who would rather argue, okay, that's a bit of a collateral damage of those sanctions. So I don't really have an answer to it, and you see, I'm also more kind of thinking while talking, but it's a difficult issue, that's for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much for your thoughts. So we have Dr. Intizar here. Please go ahead.
Yes, hello, can I talk now?
Sure.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this session, and I just would like to add more about the sanctions. It's not only the sanctions, it's also our governments in the third way. For myself, for example, in Sudan, during the coup in last October, we have been just cut from the internet for almost a whole month. That is one thing. And the other thing is that, you know, these governors or presidents, they make pledges during the meetings, for example, like the African Union meeting, they're going to do so and so for the science and for technology and for all these things. And of course, nothing of this has seen the light, or nothing, no actions have been taken actually towards achieving whatever they have agreed upon, or they decided to do it in the country. That is the second thing. And the third thing is that, yes, the scholars are at risk. Like in my country, for example, in Sudan, yes, they are at risk. But we have more other problems, like, for example, if we have the brain drain, okay? Many of these scholars have led the country, and now they are renowned figures, you know, in different parts of the world. And who were left there? Those who are not lucky enough to get a chance to get out of the country. So this is one of the things that we need really to focus in, that how we can help scientists, even to attend conferences like the issues that have been raised a few minutes ago about you know, visas, about migration officers, about all this stuff, how we can exclude them from such, you know, way of treatment or the way of just stopping them from attending conferences, for example, and how we make the data accessible for them. If, for example, like in my country, for a whole month we don't have an internet, and even when we have an internet, we will face by more problems like the sanctions. For example, we cannot access certain articles, we cannot access certain journals. So this is really, I really would like this to be raised at least towards the end of the United Nations General Assembly, and this should be made very clear for the decision makers and for the policy makers. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned really great points, and unfortunately I can touch all of them, you know, the ban of the internet and also the problems of the visa and all these things. The brain drain is one of the main issues in the developing countries, especially from South. That's why we really need the North-South and South-South collaboration. It's really, really important. And you mentioned also really good point regarding that. At the end of the UN Science Summit, we should have a declaration or a statement saying that, okay, we scientists, we are challenging with such kind of issues. So the UN, if it's responsible for such summit, should hear us and then see that, okay, we are facing such kind of difficulties. So it's really good points, and for sure I will follow it with the organizers saying, okay, we are not just gathering, talking about our challenges among ourselves. We need also policymakers also to hear us. And unfortunately, most of the sessions, you don't see politicians. Some of the ministers just appear and they just explain about all achievements that they had in their countries. But we all know that that's not true. They just, advertising something and propaganda. That's not true in most of the cases. So we as scientists, we really want to say that, okay, we have these challenges, and some of these challenges have really simple solutions. Saying, okay, science has no borders. If you accept that, so most of the problems will get solved. You are going to have access to the journals, to the conferences, to collaborations, to budgets, to visa applications, and just one word, science has no borders, and we all scientists know about that. So then policymakers should understand that and support that idea. So Anindita, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Yensi. I think that is the statement that we should all resonate, that science has no borders. And it is a good point that we should somehow make the policymakers hear us. And I think we are speaking not just for young scholars, but for all scholars, that there should not be such sanctions against scientists and scholars. And, it's rather unfortunate that humanity refuses to learn from history, because if you look back to the time of the world wars, at that time, many scholars, scientists left Germany, migrated to the US primarily. Of them, one was Einstein himself. And look what happened to science in the next decade. Well, they did end up making the bomb, but they also made a lot of progress in many other spheres of science. And today, they would be labeled as at-risk scholars by the current day definition, right? So again, because people could move across borders when they chose to, and there was some country ready to give them a home, then science progressed. And this is what we should do. I can give you one example from my country here. Here, nobody's at risk, but we don't talk across the borders. This is exactly why we started the Science Diplomacy in South Asia working group at one point of time. Last week, I was in a meeting where people are trying to talk about open science in this subcontinent. And there are representatives from senior and young academies of Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka. And the meeting is happening online in India, but there is no representative from Pakistan because of political sanctions. This is completely unacceptable. So we have to have science diplomacy, we have to have open discourse, and we have to have more and more mobility for scholars. And we cannot have legal political sanctions against scholars because of the country they belong to, because we are here to do science, which again, we are saying it has to be open. So how can you just give the name of a nationality to a scientist and say, you cannot travel to country X and Y, you cannot collaborate with scientists from country Z? You cannot, because then we are basically restraining the progress of science.
Yeah, really great points, Anindita. You also mentioned, okay, we don't see some scientists from specific countries, but the point is that when you go to the great conferences, the ones that they're coming from the countries that never have a problem, let's say, for example, with the good passport and somehow the no restriction for traveling, they're just saying that, okay, come on, there is no science in these countries because I don't met any scientists from that country, in my subject. So, but that the point is that, come on, there is no way for these people to get budget, to get visa, to get resources and all these things, plenty of issues that they cannot represent themselves and their country in the scientific events. So how you can say that there is no science in these countries? So if you don't see any scientists from any country, it doesn't mean that they don't exist. That's the problem, that you cannot have them with yourself. So that's one of the things that we should deal with, that, giving the chance to them. If they are scientists, we don't expect from the other countries to train scientists for us. At least supports the ones that they already find their path to be a scientist, and not just, somehow exclude them from the scientific activities. Thank you so much. So any other comments regarding this issue? But the good point, the take-home message is that we really need to contact the organizers of the summit to say that then we really need a statement to have that. Last year when I participated, I didn't hear about it, but we should make a channel between this summit and also the policymakers, and especially the UN people, to hear us more. That's how should run this kind of the summits. Otherwise, has makes no sense, I think, in general for all of us. So I'm not sure that the session, I think, will automatically end by the organizers almost in 5 minutes. So I don't know, I can start a new conversation or a new topic, but at the end, if you want to add something, please be free to do that. From the audiences. Maybe one of the concerns is that we as a scientist, most of us, we are not interested in science diplomacy. Maybe just because of the challenges that we have our work, especially as young scientists, and maybe some criticize that comes from our colleagues saying that, okay, by going to science diplomacy, we are politicizing science. And that's the way that we should introduce them. What is science diplomacy? Most of the people, they are not aware about the meaning of science diplomacy. That's where the challenges start. So because they always see politicians, so they don't trust the politicians, and said that if a scientist also go to the policy or diplomacy, I cannot trust that person anymore, even in the case of the scientific results, because this person is changing, somehow breaking the barriers and borders that the red lines for scientists. So we should encourage them more, having more workshops, especially for young scientists, even for PhD students and graduate students, to make them aware that, there is such topic in the world as science diplomacy. So if you don't want to enter to this topic, at least learn what is that. So after that, if you know that, you will know that where are your rights and how you can implement science in the case of the diplomacy, and help you, or having the help of diplomacy to implement science better. So I hope in future we can have many workshops regarding science diplomacy and summer schools, or maybe the conferences. And we hope that in GYA we can get budget to really raise this kind of the topic more, and then train our own